What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with. We're going to talk about life before prison, life in prison, and life out of prison. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor. But hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that will help you knock down some of the prisons you've built up in your own mind. Folks, today my guest is my man, Eric Ross.
What's up?
How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. We're doing this early, so I hope I'm feeding you a Diet Mountain Dew. So
I know, this used to be my
your
everything.
go-to?
Yeah, until I started drinking coffee, which I actually didn't start drinking coffee till I went to prison, so...
That's odd, isn't it?
Yeah. He formed new habits there, right?
Because coffee really wasn't easy to come by in prison, really.
No. But it was like the only thing that you could get your hands on that was legal and still changed your mindset a little bit. You know?
And we got to drink Diet Mountain Dew at the golf course.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good thing. We got Diet Mountain Dew, warm chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, remember when I got in
Katie.
trouble for giving the fountain drinks to the other guys that worked, and I was putting everybody's jobs at jeopardy because I was like the fountain drink salesman.
Well, for those who don't know, we were Eric and I both. There was 425 inmates at Leavenworth, and we were one of the 5 lucky ones that got to work at Fort Leavenworth Golf Course. It was, about maybe a couple miles away?
Yeah, that was
nice.
Awesome. Yeah, that was like an answer to prayer for me. I mean, I think
it was literally, we left prison, went to work on a golf course. Guys treated us like normal guys, Mike and Drew, the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. We got our own lockers there, and then we got to eat bowling alley menu food every day. Yeah. So, and then we just come back to prison.
Yeah.
Around 3:30. It's time to go back to prison, guys.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Really weird deal.
That really helped me get in shape at the end there because I used to just get the grilled chicken patties.
Yeah.
And that's how I got down to the 9% body fat when I went home. I was like, that really helped.
Well, I was doing the intermittent fasting before that was really called intermittent fasting because I didn't like to go to the chow hall after we got back and deal with that whole line and everything. So I would just eat a ton of bowling alley food at lunchtime, and that'd be it.
Yeah. Well, the problem was before I worked in the golf course, I worked in the paint shop. Yeah. And unfortunately, I painted the kitchen at Leavenworth. And this was, this is a few years in, I finally saw behind the scenes what was going on in the kitchen. And literally after I worked in the kitchen and painted in there, I didn't go back to the chow hall for like a week because I was depressed.
Now you knew.
I knew, man. There was so many cockroaches.
Oh,
it was terrible. I was like, I had to spend some time processing, like, I've been eating cockroaches. Like, it's impossible for there to be that many cockroaches in there and not have eaten some. And I'm sorry I'm sharing this with you now, but you definitely ate them.
We ate some cockroaches.
We ate cockroaches.
There were gigantic bowls that they cooked out of. Yeah.
It was crazy. And then I went to the place in the front, and I was like telling them, like, look, you go, it's funny how we have to lose ourselves there because I'm going to the counselor. I don't remember who it was. I'm like, there's cockroaches in there. Like, you guys have this. They're like, it's unavoidable. It's just because the building's so old. I was like, man, it's like, oh, well, just have to accept it.
Just understand that a cockroach can be eaten, and it's not that bad.
Yeah, I just finally came to the point. I'm like, well, I've been eating them for years, and I'm fine, so I might as well just keep eating them. Oh, well, so, oh, man.
So, Eric, are you originally from St. Louis?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me what little Eric Ross, where did little Eric Ross grow up, and what was little Eric Ross doing back in the day?
Well, it's funny because I grew up in St. Louis, but, whenever I want people to think I'm tough, I always tell them I was born in Jennings, you know what I mean? So,
nice.
But I lived in Jennings for like 2 years, the first 2 years of my life. I don't remember it. I didn't experience it, and it probably wasn't like it is now back then, but my parents didn't have very much money, so I grew up they moved from Jennings to Bridgeton, like by Northwest Plaza, off Fifi Road there, and so I grew up in Bridgeton. I went to Pattonville High School, and
big high school.
Yeah, it is. Well, at first I started out in private school, and then I remember like when I was like 11 or so, like I started hanging out with kids in the subdivision, and I was just like, man, I want to go to private or public school. I want to get on the bus and be cool like the rest of these kids, and not be like the weirdo that's going to church.
The weirdo private kid.
Yeah, the weirdo private kid. So I started going to public school in 5th grade, and then I ended up in at Pattonville. So that was that, and then and then
high school good.
Then it was all right. I grew up. So I grew up. My mom was the Sunday school teacher at church, so I was in church a lot.
All the time.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but I wasn't a good kid though. Like I was getting spanked a lot. I was really rebellious, and I remember like one time in when I was younger, I had like taken money out of the tithes thing. You know what I mean? Like terrible. And then I remember once I was in this Royal Rangers thing, and I remember like I knew where they put the money, and I was at church a lot, so like I broke into this locker and. So I remember, like, it's funny, like, looking back, I was like, man, I was manipulated.
You were thinking that way.
I was thinking that way,
kid.
like, criminal-minded back then as even a child. But it's good for me now having, like, because now that I have 2 kids and I see, like, Ella and Jeremiah, and I'm like, well, we're kind of born that way. Like, naturally, we're not, like, the greatest people, So,
well, I think everybody's got their own stuff, right?
Yeah. So I grew up like that, but when I went to high school, I remember, I still had like that Christian background where I wasn't like doing things. I remember one time I read in my yearbook, like this kid signed my yearbook, and he was like, "Oh, you're pretty cool, even though you only say shoot or darn." You know what I mean? So it was like, but then at some point, I had gotten picked on a little bit, and maybe my mindset, just paranoia of how other people were thinking about me. They probably didn't even really perceive me the way that I thought.
It was just the way you were thinking.
It was the way that I thought they perceived me, like I wasn't cool or so popular. So at some point, my parents moved to St. Charles my senior year, and then I just made this decision. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be popular and cool, and like the rest of these guys that I kind of thought were the most popular and cool, I was like, I'm going to be like them, So then when I transferred schools, I just kind of changed in my persona and started acting more like these other guys.
So you really just took on their persona, what you thought was cool, what you thought made them popular.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't being myself. I was being what I wanted to be. Yeah. I wanted to be popular and cool.
Well, I think that probably happens a lot with kids.
Yeah.
I mean, especially nowadays when you've got all this social media out there and everybody's posting what you're supposed to be and where you're supposed to be, and this is the best place to be, and this is what you're supposed to wear when you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of pressure on kids. There's always been a lot of pressure on kids, but I think nowadays it's even worse with what kids have to deal with Instagram,
especially
whatever.
If they're, asking them if they're a boy or a girl. I mean,
right.
Like back then, I'd rather have the pressure we had.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, anyways, sorry.
So you got into St. Charles. You started being cool.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
So what happened was I barely graduated high school. I was in a work program where I was going to school the first part of the day, and then I would get to leave the second part of the day. Well, I failed that class, and then they weren't even letting me do that program anymore the second half of the year.
Like, what was the work program? Like, what would you do? Was it volunteer work?
I was working at Quick Trip.
Okay.
It was just like preparing you for...
just prepare to get when you... Okay.
Yeah. Like
I got you.
I had enough credits. Yeah. Because I guess from going from Pattonville to there, I think I required more credits there than there. Yeah. So I had a ton of credits, so so it didn't really matter. But I failed all my classes. I started skipping school. To be cool, I ended up getting like fake IDs. I started drinking and partying and going out and, starting fights and just doing whatever.
Did it work? I mean, were you popular?
I mean, not really. No. In my own mind. I was a legend in my own mind,
all right.
But like it was hard because in that process, I got a Mustang, a GT, and I was driving around. People thought, like they're looking at me like I'm this spoiled rich kid. And like, I remember I was kind of fight with this guy, Jared McCarthy, because he was like, "Oh, you're just a spoiled." I'm like, "No, I pay for this car. I work for it, But so I went to this party one time with my buddy James, and there was so many people at this party, and I had drank a bunch of beer and Ice House, and we got drunk, and then we left this party, and there was like a pinball machine. Like I hit like 11 cars because there was it wasn't like I totaled every car, but I just to hit. Get out of there, like I hit, and I accidentally backed in and pinned one guy between two cars and almost broke his leg. Like it was intense. So after that, I couldn't be popular at that school anymore. You know what I'm saying?
That was probably
that was the end of my popularity there. Yeah. So then I just started skipping school all the time. I had the fake IDs. I started drinking like even early on in the day and going to other people's houses and drinking and just hanging out and just complete foolishness, So, and then I almost didn't graduate. I wasn't going to graduate, but one of my teachers, he actually was from Pattonville, and I had an F, and I was failing. I was going to have to be a super senior the next year, and I cried in front of him like, dude, please don't fail me. All you got to do is give me a D, man. Don't do this to me. I broke down in tears in front of him, and he ended up passing me.
He did pass.
Yeah, he did pass me. So I made it, and so.
So when you were getting into drinking and not going to skipping school, did you venture into drugs?
It's funny because I had always said like, oh, I'll never do cocaine. I'll never do this. And I still had like going to church and I had faith. I had faith in like Jesus and God, but I didn't understand that if you have faith, there's action required. Like I just believed, and I was blaspheming God's name because like most Christians who believe in God but then don't do anything that he says. You know what I mean? That's pretty much how my faith was. And so I was like a virgin still, and so I was like making these justifications in my mind. I was like, well, I'm drinking and doing this crazy stuff, but at least I'm still a virgin. So, and I'd be like, oh, I'll never do cocaine. But then like eventually I was out at a party around 19 or 20 and I did some cocaine and then I'd be like, oh, well, I'm still a virgin. You know what I mean? Like I justified like these crazy justifications, you know what I mean? And really more on the spiritual aspect of things, because my mindset was thinking about God still in the back of my mind. Like what's, I don't want to go to hell. You know what I mean? Like I want to have fun on earth, but I don't want to go to hell. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's like somebody sitting on your shoulder.
Right. So I had that kind of going on. And then, to get to how I ended up in prison. So I made all these tiny, small decisions. You know what I mean? Like, like we learn about in our day. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And those seemingly unimportant decisions, just eventually break down your conscience to where you're like, okay, like here we are, And then eventually I lost my virginity, and I'm like, all right. And then it was all over. All hell breaks loose. Yeah. So I was working at this place, Magellan Behavioral Health, and I had started going to college. I had a political science major. I wanted to be the president of the United States. You know what I mean? I'm like, this was, I set high goals, So, but
that's pretty high.
Yeah, that's a high goal.
A lot of people have political science degrees, never think of that.
Yeah. That was my mindset. Yeah. But then as I was in there, I got a DWI when I was 19, and I was like, and actually that's how I got this scar on my head right here.
That's a nice scar.
Yeah, I hit a parked car.
Kind of a badass scar.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I hit a parked car, and I had a party at my parents' house, and I had all these people over there, but then I was like, I heard about another party, and like these girls had like wanted me to come over there, and I was like, all right, and I kicked everybody out of my parents' house, and I went to another party, and I hit a parked car on my way there. So yeah. So anyway, and I got my first DWI, and at that time I had been working at this place, Magellan Behavioral Health. It's a pretty big insurance company for like psychiatric insurance. But anyway, so I was working there, and at that time I had been kind of, and my group of friends, like all the people I was hanging out with, like people from my baseball team, I didn't have too many friends from the high school, you know what I mean? I had a few friends still from Pattonville, but majority of my friends were just oddball friends here and there, and I'm hanging out with them, smoking, drinking every day pretty much, just going to parties at UMSL and whatever, and it wasn't like I was a drug addict, it was just like you
were just hanging.
I was just a party. I would just like to party every day, so.
And there were a group of people that like to do the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, and
it wasn't like you were by yourself.
Right. And typically I feel like that's what majority of people that age are doing.
Yeah.
But, at least the unsuccessful ones.
Well, no, I'd say from 18 to 22, there's an awful lot of kids that are trying to find their way in college, you know, because it's their first time out, and you've got to then figure out, because you lose a lot of freshmen because that's all they do is party.
Right.
But yeah, you have to balance out what's this social life that I've basically free as whatever I want to do, and then I've got these responsibilities. I got to be at class tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've only got to go to like 2 or 3 classes. You got the rest of the day. So what do? Do you study, or do you just start partying more?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the problem is when you're that age, you're not thinking about the future. All you're thinking about is that day or that tomorrow. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're not weighing the risk versus the reward or anything. That's what we need to start teaching people at a young age, like really implementing, like, look, future, these decisions that you're making right now are really going to affect your future, you know? So, and shoot, I mean, I'm still suffering the consequences from my DWIs. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been almost 20 years since I got a DWI, and I still don't have a driver's license because of it. You know.
Wow.
So, but anyway, so I started working at this place, Magellan Behavioral Health, and I just have to tell this side because there was this bigger black girl that worked there, and me and her started like kind of talking, and she would, you know, we would trade CDs, and I was just doing my thing at this job, and I was like one of the only guys that worked there. It was an odd job for me, and I was just having fun. But anyway, she invited me to go to a party. And so I ended up going to this party with her. And I took some of my friends. And I was like, you know, yeah, I'll go hang out. But we went, and, like, we were the only white guys there. You know, my friends were scared, you know. But I was having fun. You know what I mean? Because I was always, like, I never really.
Well, you knew her.
I knew her. Well, and I was not really smart enough to be afraid. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, whatever. And those people saw that in me, that I was not afraid and not really racist at all. Never really even been that way. But so I was just hanging out and having fun, and I started hanging out with those guys. And they were, you know, involved in gangs. It was like a gang thing, you know. So I started hanging out with these guys, and you know, they were into selling cocaine and just that lifestyle, you know, that criminal lifestyle of like, for real criminals lifestyle. Like they had uncles that had been like self-made millionaires in the drug game. You know what I mean? So, and that was their aspiration. And I, you know, and I'm like a typical white guy, you know what I mean? Like dressed from the buckle, whatever. But I'm hanging out with these guys, and my mentality started, I was drawn to that. Well, and they're like, you know, like, look at me wrong, we're going to fight. And I was already trying to be the tough guy anyways. So, and that probably drew them to me, where I was not really being myself, but being this person who's tough and whatever, you know. So we started hanging out, and it was really just exhilarating for me, because it was like a shift of, like, I was still hanging out with my friends and stuff, but then I would start hanging out with these guys, and it was exciting, you know what I mean? And like, I'm
kind of an adrenaline rush.
Oh yeah, I was like, you know, I'm going and hanging out with these guys, and, you know, they'd be selling crack to people. You know, seeing guns get pulled on people, just crazy stuff, you know. So I was at a drive-by one time, like not like a real, but like I was in the car looking for people, and a gun did get shot at a house, you know. And I'm like, just a white guy, like, how did I end up in these situations?
Well, did you think, Eric, that, oh my God, I've gone too far, or were you like, no, I want to go farther?
Like, well, I was an idiot, you know what I mean? Like, I remember one time, we were at this house on the north side. Well, and there was also this aspect, like, where I realize it now, but like, these guys never had a white friend before either. And I realize it now because, like, there was times where it was like we were learning this relationship together, because they would take me with them places, and like, there was times where I had gotten arrested. You know, they would pull us over, and the cops, like, arrested me, and they would be like, "Oh, sir, you got a warrant out for your arrest." And I'm sitting in the back. I'm like, "I don't have a warrant out for my arrest." And then, you know, they got me in the car, and they'd be like, "Are you okay?" You know what I mean? Like, they thought I got kidnapped or something, you know? And I was like, had been pre-coached what to say before they even, you know, and I'd be like, "Yeah, no, we were playing basketball at the park." And they'd be like, "You were playing basketball in that?" And I'd be like, "Man, I wasn't playing. I'm white. I was just watching." You know what I'm saying? So there was that intent. And then they started hiding me in the back seat anytime we would go on the north side. So I remember one time on the north side, there was like, it was the drug house, and I'm there. And then they think somebody's trying to come rob the drug house. And I'm outside, and they're like, this one guy's pulling out his gun and cocking his gun. And then I'm like, where's my gun? I need a gun too. Like, I shouldn't be the only one here without a gun, you know? So I was just, I don't know. It was just, I was retarded, you know? So, and that was like cool to me, you know? Like, I don't know if you ever watched that movie Face Off. with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, when they actually take their faces off
They
trade lives.
Yeah, but I was drawn to Nicolas Cage's character. Like I was like, wow, that was like cool to me. That would be awesome to be like that guy. Like what in the world? You know, and this is when I'm like younger, 19, 20, 21. But by the time I was like 22, I had gotten 2 more DWIs. You know, I'm driving around as crazy. I had an apartment, so.
Were you making good money with this whole life of the drugs?
Well, I had actually started a painting company. I wasn't even selling drugs. I was just hanging around. All my friends were drug dealers.
So they were drug dealers. You started your own painting company.
Yeah.
But you would ride with them and get into these crazy situations.
Yeah. I wasn't successful as a drug dealer. Like one time they gave me drugs to sell and like I went to a party and I just ended up doing all the drugs with everybody at the party. Like I wasn't very good as a drug dealer.
You took the supply.
Yeah. I wasn't a very good businessman.
Yeah. You're just trying to make everybody happy.
Yeah. I was just having fun, so I was like, I wasn't good at that. So it was like, you know what? And they never really charged me for anything. Like my friend, like he'd always pay for everything. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like we were really friends because it wasn't like he was just hanging out with me because I was giving him a bunch of money for drugs. We actually really became friends, and I'm still friends with him to this day. But we can't hang out as much anymore like we used to. Well, so,
Eric, tell me, like, how did it all get to the point where you're in trouble?
Yeah. Okay. So at the age of 22, I had started dating this girl, and I basically living this lifestyle, crazy lifestyle with these guys and doing my own thing. And somehow I got in a relationship with a girl that was like a good girl. She was an accountant, and I ended up messing that relationship up, and then I got heartbroken. And I had this realization after I lost this girl that I loved. I was like, man, like, everything that made me lose this girl was like things that wasn't even me. You know what I mean? Like I realized like I'm not even being myself. If she really knew who I was, you know what I mean? Like everything that I really am is what she was really looking for, even though she was attracted to the funny, the good things about me, but the bad things about me was what ended up ruining that relationship. So then I had a turn where I turned to God and I said, you know what? Like, Lord, help me change my life. Like I got to stop. So, and then I ended up having to do house arrest and like 20 days of work release because I got 3 DWIs in like a year and a half, and I didn't realize DWIs really even affected you that way. I just thought they were expensive tickets, so.
Yeah, they take that stuff really serious.
Yeah, this is when Mothers Against Drunk Driving back. So the last DWI I got was in 2004. So then I took a turn where when I had a loft apartment in St. Charles. It was a nice apartment. I was living by myself. Because I was doing all right with painting. I was doing like new construction paint jobs, and I was making decent money. And
and you're good at that stuff. I mean, you're painting and
I wasn't as good then as I was.
You got better
now. I got better as time progressed. Experience.
That's good.
Yeah. So at some point I turned to the Lord and I changed my life. I got sober for like 5.5, 6 years.
Wow.
And I got extreme. I started going to church and like Bible studies and I was heartbroken, and I stopped partying, stopped doing my thing, and I just focused on my business and studying the Bible.
Okay.
And so I did that.
This doesn't sound like a path to prison.
No, it doesn't. No. So that's why my story's unique, because it's like I, kind of like got right and then went worse after the fact, but not really worse, but yeah, it's not the typical path to prison.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound like it.
But I had like 5.5 years where I didn't shave or cut my hair.
Wow.
Did I ever show you a picture of that?
You know what? You did show me a picture of that. I don't know why. I think you showed me a picture of it at Leavenworth, maybe. Did you have it at Leavenworth?
Oh, maybe I did. I don't know.
Anyway, I do know that picture.
Yeah. So like
you look like one of the disciples.
Yeah, so I got I know. I started I'm like, well, if I can't act like Jesus Jesus, I'm at least going
to
look like
look
him.
like
you know what I mean? So I had this Nazirite vow, and so you know, if you guys can't tell by yet, my personality is very extreme. So then if I'm going to be a Christian, I'm going to be a prophet. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so
you're going to be political science. You're going to be the president.
I get it.
Yeah.
So you're getting to see the picture now. So I turn to the Lord. I get extreme, and I'm like doing this thing. But then I get sober, and I start reading the Bible, but I start getting like really judgmental. You know what I mean? So I start like pointing out everybody else's flaws and everything. And then like I'm judging the church. I'm like, oh, this is just a big business. This is all about the money. And I kind of start isolating myself and getting like my own view and mentality. So, and I studied the word. So I know the word, you know, it's like funny, like the Lord's even got me doing ministry. I'm preaching a couple times a month now, but, so I learned the word, but I had it twisted, you know what I mean? So, and then, but God's so merciful. So I was judging everybody, judging the world. And, you know, Jesus says, judge not lest you be judged, you know? So by doing that, I kind of brought myself in this position where I needed to be humbled, and I was working at this job. So that probably happened in like 2011. I was working on this job, and this girl started coming on to me, and she was, you know, attractive, whatever. And so I ended up shaving my beard, cutting my hair, and I just started going back to that, like, justifying things. You know what I mean? I didn't talk to her, like, but it got me to shave and cut my hair and trying to change my lifestyle. I kind of let go of different things and kind of started to go in a different direction where I was like, oh, well, you know, whatever God created is good and to be accepted if received with thanksgiving. Like, hey, marijuana's okay. God created. You know what I mean? Like, you know, this is okay.
It's all good.
Yeah, I didn't drink. I still didn't drink for a while, but I got in some relationships, and, you know, I just started justifying things, and I started getting a little bit of weed. And then I'm like, you know, doesn't make sense to pay for weed. You know what I'm saying? So, and at that time it wasn't legal or anything. So, you know, you're having to be sneaky and hide things. And I already had that draw to that type of lifestyle, but I'm in a different place now where I'm like more mature and more business minded. You know what I mean? So I started getting weed, and then I was selling weed, but I wasn't selling
from the same guys that you knew before. Or not really?
Actually, no. I had formed a new relationship. I was in business with this guy. I was rehabbing houses for him.
Yeah.
And he was a house flipper, but he was doing them as like Section 8 houses.
Yeah.
And then I started doing, later down the road, we were doing custom homes. But so I had shifted my painting company. Well, especially after 2008. It's like I was painting subdivisions, and there was no subdivisions to paint anymore.
Everything
you know what I mean?
went down.
All my painting business was a new construction painting business.
Yeah.
And new construction was like, all right. So then I had to shift gears, and I started doing flooring, and then I started doing, next thing I know, I was doing kitchens and bathrooms, and I started doing whole houses for this guy.
Yeah, you just adapted to the market.
Yeah. So, and then I remember he had paid me in cash a couple times, and it was like, you know, 5s and 10s and 20s. You know, I'm like, you know, I'm hip to it. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay. So then I say something to him. I'm like, so what's up, man? What's going on with this? You know, like, and I had told him stories. He was a black guy. And I had told him stories about my past, you know, like how my friends had to hide me in the back seat. And I was like this crazy white guy, you know, like, there's Kings of Comedy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Kings of Comedy, but there's a segment on there where they're like, they talk about, if you ever see a white guy with those black guys, like, don't mess with that white guy, because, like, you have to understand what he did to earn those black guys' respect. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, I always joke around, like, that was me, you know? So, but, so I told him stories like that, and I knew him for 6 years, you know, before we even talked about drugs. And I don't think that he was selling drugs the whole time. I think that things had just happened where we both had kind of like failed as businessmen, and we both were like just scrambling to like, okay,
this
screw
was a
it,
money stream,
whatever it is to make money. Because I was like bankrupt, you know. I had during that beard phase, there was a point in time where I had 20 employees with my painting company, and I lost like $150,000 in 6 months. You know what I'm saying? And I never was able to recuperate from that. I never filed bankruptcy or anything, but
you were basically bankrupt.
I was bankrupt. Every job was I was robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it was like I wasn't.
So you guys really got into the drug part of it as a cash flow item.
Exactly. Okay. I was using, so he would front me marijuana and I would pay my guys, but I would have a little bit of time to pay him, and I would pay my guys right away, and then pay pay off chunks of drug debt with money that I made from my jobs.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and but of course it's like I started getting ounces of weed, then I was getting quarter pounds, then I'm getting pounds. And then it was just like, all right. And I knew he was from California. And we've, if anybody's seen the movie Blow, you're like, as a drug dealer, you're always looking for that connect.
Yeah.
The California connect or some straight, if you can't get the direct connect in like Mexico or South America, your next best bet is like California or some other place like that. So, and him being from California and already he was getting marijuana, I started talking to him. I'm like, hey, like what's up with cocaine? I actually was the one who brought it up to him, and he was like, whatever, let me talk to these guys. And I mean, it took some time, and then I'm talking to my friend, the other guy and he's like, man, we've been selling heroin because we can't even get cocaine anymore. And he's like, I hate selling heroin. We got like 6 guys on the corner with guns because these heroin addicts they'll take your life for the drugs. You know what I mean? He's like, it was weird to see like the depressed state of like the drug dealers. You know what I mean? They're like, we want cocaine. We don't want to sell heroin. These dudes are going to kill us. You know what I mean? Like, so whenever I brought up cocaine in like 2011, 12, it was my one buddy was like, referred to it as like, that's like a dinosaur. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to find in St. Louis at this time. So I started talking to him, and eventually he calls me one day, hey, come by. And so I come by, and he gave me 9 ounces of cocaine, which is a quarter kilo. And he's like, all right, here you go. Let's see what happens. You know what I mean? So I take that quarter kilo and I go to my buddy's spot and I take it to them, and they're like, oh man, like this is legit. This is the stuff. It was good, like on the crack side of things, like it would come back more, like because when most guys that are really in the drug game with cocaine in St. Louis City are taking powder cocaine and cooking it up and making crack, and because you can get a lot more return out of your investment. But so I took it to them, and immediately like I'm on my way back to the guy again with $32,000 to get a whole kilo. You know what I mean? So then I'm like,
everything happened fast.
Yeah. So then I'm like, yeah, that was like the nightmare success again.
Yeah, exactly.
This was
the
like
nightmare success of cocaine.
This was nightmare success of cocaine. So then I start, and then, of course I can't introduce this guy to this guy because that's my mean. You know what I mean? Like my advantage was, I knew the guy in California, I knew the guy in St. Louis, but they didn't know each other.
Right. You were the connect.
Yeah. So, and that was a good, and I felt good about that too. Whenever my guy would like, there's this, black stripper girl, like she's like, oh, and he's like, oh, and I can hear him whispering to her like, oh, that's the connect. You know what I mean? Like that was like,
made you feel good.
I liked that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and this is after having studied the Bible for 6 or 7 years, growing my hair out, having a Nazarite vow. And it wasn't like I had given up on God. It was just that I had just like, I had just given up on everything. You know what I mean? I'm like, because it was like I tried so hard and I still failed. I'm like, I can't do this. You know what I mean? Like, so I took this other route.
You just went all in on this.
Yeah, and I even got so kind of deceived in my mind that I even kind of thought that this opportunity with these kilos of cocaine was like a gift from God to get out of debt. Yeah. I was like, this is how I'm still justifying.
He's your partner in
that. Yeah. So like I'm praying over the kilos, like, all right, Lord, so I get to a point where things are getting out of control, and I wasn't doing any cocaine or anything at first.
But you're making good money.
Yeah, I was doing all right. And it wasn't like a constant thing. You know what I mean? It was like once a week or once every 2 weeks, I would get a few kilos and then take it off. And then there might have even been a couple months where I wasn't able to get anything. And I remember talking to my guy, I'm like, dude, what is the deal? And he's like, hey, did you see all the decapitated bodies down in Mexico? Like, that's what's going on. There's cartel wars right now, So it was weird to be like,
you're part of that.
I'm like, my business was affected by all these people being decapitated. You know what I mean? But I was still doing construction. I was still working every day. You know what I mean? I was still, in my mind, I was like, all right, this wasn't
keeping it all together.
This wasn't my end game. This was like this shortcut that was going to help me really fulfill these other dreams that I had just kept falling short of being.
It's a stopgap.
Yeah. So basically to be doing what I'm doing now without, but that's how that happened.
So did you just get one day the door gets knocked down and they handcuff you, or were you given a heads up that things are getting hot and they're after this area of town? And what happened?
Well, so what happened was, I had kind of started just partying hardcore, and I'm going out and buying, I was buying everybody's drinks at the bar just because that's what I really wanted. You know what I mean? To make everybody seen happy and be cool and whatever. You know what I mean?
Popular kid.
Yeah, I wanted to be the popular guy. I was like, you cannot be popular in the position I was in, and with cocaine, it's like I couldn't have ran out of cocaine if I wanted to. You know what I mean? So that was bad, especially if you start using cocaine. And it wasn't like I was a drug addict, because I would just do cocaine so I could party more and drink more. Really, that was like but it wasn't like, because when I didn't have cocaine, it wasn't like I was chasing it or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? So anyways, I got to a point where I was getting 3 kilos the next day, but I was wrestling. Like, I remember, it's probably weird, but I had felt like evil spirits in my room. Like, I felt this thing hit me in my back, taunting me, reminding me of how.
Did you get paranoid?
Super.
Did you get paranoid that people were going to snitch around you?
I just got extremely paranoid.
Period.
I was just paranoid. Okay. Like marijuana and cocaine and those things, these all make you paranoid anyways. And then if you have a brain and you're doing illegal things, you'd be paranoid on top of that. And then you add these other drugs that make you super paranoid.
Yeah.
So I was feeling extremely paranoid. And I remember going to bed that night and I'm like, man, I was just paranoid. Because the next day I got this thing coming, and I got up the next morning, I take a shower, and I get down on my knees and I prayed in the shower, and I was just like, Lord, whatever it takes, make me change my life. And I went to work that day, and then I was going back on my lunch break to take care of basically getting rid of these 3 kilos. And there was a guy at my house that, was just there during the day and whatever. And I called him and he didn't answer the phone. So I already knew something was up. And as I'm driving down the street, it was on Jungerman. I'm driving down Jungerman, and this house is on Omar Court, and it's a court just right off Jungerman. So, and as I'm driving towards it, I see the street, and right at the very back, there, I see cop cars just lined all the way down the street. So, of course, I didn't turn down the street. Only an idiot would do that. But so I just keep driving. And then the house backed up to Jungerman, and I look at the house, and I see, people in full body gear, AR-15s, surrounding the house. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. It's so I just keep driving. I call a lawyer. You know what I mean? I had been dating some girl back in the day who was now involved with a lawyer, or no, she became a lawyer.
Okay.
So I called her, even though we weren't dating anymore. Yeah. I called her immediately because she knew
maybe we should start dating.
Yeah. So she gives me her boyfriend's number, and so then I talk to him, and then he it's above his pay grade. Okay. I'm like, this is a 3 kilo situation, and so then they're like, look, they're like, look, don't talk to anybody.
How much cocaine is 3 kilos?
3 kilos of cocaine is 6.6 pounds. So
it's
so they're so if you're selling them, there was at certain points where kilos would even go for almost 42,000 a piece, and that's wholesale. But typically, it'd be about $32,000 to $36,000 at that time.
Okay.
But a gram of cocaine, would sell for $100, and that could, but that's a gram of cocaine that could have been cut. So these kilos uncut, in my mind, I'm thinking, I thought about this a lot. It's almost over. If you were to do it right and you had 3 kilos of cocaine and you cut it and reproduced it, you could almost make it $600,000.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So, but that would be
a
lot of traffic. You know what I mean? But me, I was just I was smart enough to just have one person.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just taking this to one person. That's it. You know what I mean? So I have that situation where I call a lawyer, and then I go back to work. I took my phone apart, all this stuff. You know what I mean? And I go back to work, and then I'm like, you know what? and then I remembered I was doing a flip house, and I had called this guy was going to my house to drop my tools off at that place. And I was supposed to meet him there around my lunch break because I was multitasking. I was trying to knock out two things at once. And so then I call him to be like, hey, don't go to my house, And I call him. He's like, hey, what's up, man? I'm like, yeah, dude, I just want to let you know, hey, don't go to my house right now. I'm going to have to meet you at a different time. I'll meet you later on just to get my tools. And he's like, oh, I'm at your house. I'm like, oh, you're at my house. He's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm like, really? I'm like, well, okay, is anybody there? He's like, no, nobody's here. I'm like, huh. So then I say, okay, there's like one of those keypad locks on my front door where you can just enter a code. And I'm like, hey, just go in my house and put my tools in my garage. I'll have to catch up with you later on. I'm not going back to my house anytime soon. Right. You know what I'm saying? And then I heard another voice in the background say, I wouldn't come home anytime soon either if I was you. And then as soon as I heard that, I hung up, and took my phone back apart. And I'm on at a customer's house. I was painting their house. And I had a guy working for me. I still had about 6 guys working for me at this time. And I was like, all right, like here it's over. You know what I mean? Like, so then I think I called the lawyer again at one point, and I'm like the question was, should I turn myself in? Should I not? What should I do? You know what I mean? Like, so then I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? Face the music. And I'm remembering too, like, I'm like, you know what? I woke up this morning and I prayed, God, whatever it takes, make me change my life. And I'm like, of course, this is the prayer.
This is the big change.
This is the big. I'm like, Lord, out of all the prayers I've ever prayed, like, why hear this one? You know what I mean? Like, why does this have to be the way? You know? So I said, screw it, face the music. I call them back. I call that same guy's phone back. I don't know their number, obviously. Right. So I call that guy's phone back, and I'm like, hey, man. I'm like, all right. I said, I'm at work. Like, I can meet you guys like around like 5 or 6 o'clock after I get off work. They're like, look, if you don't come here right now, we're gonna come find you. It was like I still had this. There's a lot of control that we had.
We're gonna try to work this out.
It's on my time, on my schedule. Like, that was like how naive I was, not really understanding the gravity of the situation. So I'm like, yeah, whenever I got time, I'll come meet you guys after I get off work. We'll talk, whatever. You know what I mean? And I wasn't going to talk to him because, that was the best advice I ever got from anybody. Yeah. I'm sure, people that do cooperate with them. I don't know. It wasn't really an option for me because I was really involved with people where they were my friends, first of all. Second of all, I'd rather go to prison than have to look over my shoulder and maybe
somebody's
get killed.
Gonna take you down.
You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. So and honestly,
so what'd you do, Eric?
So I ended up driving back. So I said, all right, I'll be there in a few minutes. And they're like, yeah, well, I said I'll be there in like 30 minutes. So they're like, all right, we'll sit down, we'll pop a Coke. And I didn't realize after I got there, I go back and I'm like, look, plead the fifth. You know what I mean? Like I don't have anything to talk about. Whatever, I just needed my lawyer, whatever. So they ended up arresting me and taking me to St. Peter's. But I didn't realize.
And who was this?
It was like.
Was it the feds? Was it the sheriff?
The front was the DEA.
DEA.
Yeah. So it was DEA and the St. Peter's police force.
Those are the two people that were sitting there waiting.
Yeah. So
they arrest you and take you to the county jail?
They arrest me and take me to the county. They take me to St. Peter's, the municipality over there. They take me there, and I'm just sitting there. And did
they say what you were under arrest for?
They didn't say.
They didn't say anything.
See, it was like they read me my rights.
Yeah.
That's all I really remember is they read me my rights. But as soon as they said you have the right to remain silent, I'm like, yeah, that's the
one I'm going to do.
That's the one that I like right there. You know what I mean? And then I remember I'm sitting there. They're doing their thing, and they're like taking my big screen TV off the wall and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And then they took the TV stand, and I was like, oh, you guys need that for evidence. You know what I mean? Like, so I said, whose house is that going to be in tonight? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I was still kind of a retard, with the situation. But so I ended up there, and then, so then the other guy that was there had gotten arrested, and so then I get out.
The guy you were working with.
Yeah. No. The other guy that I was involved with the drugs, Nobody else got arrested.
Okay.
Just me.
Okay.
So, and I think what they did was,
well, there was a guy that was at the house.
yeah,
with all
he
the
was
people.
he wasn't really even involved.
Yeah.
He was just like,
happened to be at the wrong place.
he
at the
was
wrong
just
time.
he was just one of my friends that
Man.
lived with me.
Yeah.
Well, he did, but he had even moved out because I think he was like, whatever Eric's got going on is crazy. But he still had a room there.
Yeah.
But he was like staying with his girlfriend, and he would like come there during the day to do some work stuff.
Okay.
You know, and he was just there. So I.
Surprise to him.
Yeah. So, well, he knew, but whatever. Yeah. But I had told the feds at one point in time, so there was like 6 months that went by before I even got indicted. And I'm talking to my lawyer, and he's telling me like, hey,
okay, but you're jumping ahead there. So they take you to jail, then they just released you?
Yeah.
Okay, so they said, hey, we got a picture of you, fingerprints you, head on home.
Yeah.
All right.
And it was a wild experience. I'm like, okay. So then,
now what?
so because I'm like thinking in my mind, all right, here I'm going to prison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so then they let me back out, and I'm like confused. Like,
yeah.
What's going on? So then I meet with the lawyer. You know, it was like $8,000 or whatever, or $10,000. So I go and I give him $5,000, and actually, you know, the guys that I had been working with, they were actually giving me money to pay my lawyers, which was really nice of them. You know what I mean? So, but it was in their best interest as well, right?
Yeah.
So so it was a good friendship we had, and anyway, so I go to the lawyer, and he's telling me like, hey, you know, like you didn't cooperate with him? No, I didn't tell him anything. And then the other guy, as far as I knew, didn't cooperate with him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, neither of you guys cooperated with him. I'm like, no. And he's like, well, I don't know. And then as time went on, he's like, man, I think they might have just had to drop this thing because they would typically they kick in the door and they got this and they start threatening you. Like they sat me down. And they're like, oh, you realize you're going to prison for 25 years, blah, 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 blah.
Giving them names.
Yeah. And I started saying, well, I'm like, well, that's something I need to talk to my lawyer about. And that's just how I answered everything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That sounds like something I need to talk to my lawyer about. Oh yeah. Oh, that sounds like something I need to talk to my lawyer about. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I actually was smart about that. You know what I mean? Because they were lying.
Political science guy.
Yeah. So this is something I need to talk to my lawyer about. So I just kept saying that. And whenever I was at my lawyer, he was like, man, I don't know. They might have to drop this thing because of just the circumstances, how it was weird because I wasn't home, that other guy was there. Mm-hmm. Who do you pin it on? You know what I mean? Like, but you know, obviously conspiracy is there.
But they didn't find drugs at the house?
No, they did.
Oh, they did. Okay, so there were drugs at the house. Okay.
Yeah. They got the 3
I thought
kilos.
Maybe there was.
They got the 3 kilos.
Okay, all right. They got
the 3
that.
kilos.
All right.
No, well, what I was doing was I was stupid enough to have these things mailed.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it was.
So it was there. And
yeah.
They were sitting on it, so they had that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was the postal inspectors.
Got it.
So the DEA was the front, but the postal inspector was the federal side.
Sure.
But they would have let it go to state, but they ended up doing it as a federal indictment.
Yeah.
Well, mostly because of the postal,
sure.
but also because of the quantity.
Going state to state.
Yeah. So it was that was the situation with that. And that was kind of foolish, but at first it was like the guy was getting it mailed to his house. Mm-hmm. And I was going and picking it up. And then I'm like, after a year or a year and a half of doing that, I just was like,
not a big deal.
It felt comfortable. I got comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to the point where I was like, like, let's just use my address.
Sure.
I was even using my mom's address. I didn't even know. You know what I mean? So like, I just got foolish with that. You know what I mean? Because it seemed like I was outsmarting them. Like, well, why would they
think that you would do that?
Why would they think that 3 kilos of cocaine was in the mail and I would have it?
Sure.
This white guy. You know what I mean? Like, and if as long as it's not some Hispanic cartel or some drug dealer mailing it, why would the post office ever suspect that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
your attorney says maybe we were obviously he had to have started talking to somebody from the federal side. When did you know what you were dealing with?
Well, it wasn't until like 6 months later that finally he called me, and that was like, because I'd been giving him money. Mm-hmm. You know, I was giving him like $1,000 every time I saw him. Yeah. And then I was like,
what are we doing?
Why am I still giving you money if you're telling me that I might not be indicted? You know what I mean? Like, so I stopped giving him money, and then but then he ended up calling me, and they came down with a conspiracy to distribute cocaine in the amount of 2.5 to 3.5 kilos. And I had been just kind of like silently hoping that maybe this thing was over with because it was so long. You know, it was like, that's the torment of the federal stuff, right? You get in trouble, then they let you out, and you're like, what's going on? But really, they're watching you. They're doing it. You know what I mean? And trying to see. So I was obviously had the mindset that they were probably tracking, watching me, and I just kept doing the same thing I had done on a daily basis without selling drugs. You know what I mean? Even seeing the same people again to not make it obvious that any of these relationships were suspicious. So that happened, and I.
What'd they say your time?
So at first they were talking about like 7 years, 7 years. But then, as they weren't able to get me to cooperate, the pressure started to intensify. They like picked up my girlfriend from her work. They're picking up different people in my life. You know what I mean? And then they even had they found a fingerprint on one of these things at my house, and they picked up this kid, and then this girl that I had kind of known from Applebee's, they went to her house and they arrested her brother, and then she made up this whole fabricated story that they coached her on, had her write out this whole thing, and it was like complete lies. You know what I mean? Everything that she had said, because she didn't know anything about me. Like I wasn't going around telling anybody what I was doing.
Right.
I wasn't stupid enough to do that.
Right.
So they just did all this stuff to try and add pressure. And at one point, they were telling me, my lawyer called me in there. He's like, dude, you're looking at 10 to 15 years. Because they said that I obstructed justice. Well, back up. They finally got me to the point where they're like, all right, we will give you a downward departure. Because they knew I wasn't going to cooperate. They're like, all we want you to do is tell us how Nick was involved, which was the guy at my house. And me, with this bright idea that I had, I'm like, I'm going to get Nick out of trouble. You know what I mean? And clear his name. So I go in there and I tell him, Nick is completely innocent. He's just a guy at the wrong place at the wrong time, blah, 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 blah. So, and of course, I tell Nick that, and Nick, he caves under the pressure. He ends up pleading guilty. And as soon as he pled guilty, that's why I still had some leverage until he pled guilty. But as soon as he pled guilty, then they said, okay, you obstructed justice. You lied about Nick's cooperation. You told us he was completely innocent. And he's telling us he's not. You know what I mean? So then they also had where I had gone to the Applebee's girl, and I was like, look, what are you doing? What's going on? Like, hey, that's whatever they're saying that I'm saying about you isn't true. They're just doing all this to stir us up against each other. Like, come on.
So they said that was tampering.
They said I tampered with witnesses. So then they had me for these two things, and they're trying to enhance my levels and stuff. And it was like, my lawyer was like, look, dude, you're doing 10 to 15 years. And I was like, well, I remember I kind of cried in front of him. I was like, because it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't change my options. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, that still doesn't, just because you're saying I'm going to be doing more prison time, that doesn't mean that I can now cooperate.
Right.
I'm still stuck in the same position of not being able to cooperate. Exactly. You know what I mean? So I stuck to my guns, and I couldn't cave. That wasn't a gamble I was willing to take just to keep my life. So there was a scripture in the Bible that says a man's judgment is from the Lord. So I kind of just had been turning back to God, realizing how messed up my mentality was, and I was reading the Bible again, and I just stuck to that. I'm like, all right, Lord, my judgment's from you. Whatever it is, you're fair. You know what I mean? Like, the whole situation, whatever. So, and I ended up going to court that day, and I got I ended up with a 5-year prison sentence after all that. So, so that was it. So did they take you right away that day, or were you? No, they let me self-surrender. Okay. So you self-surrendered at Marion? Yeah. That was wild. You know what I mean? Like, my girlfriend at the time, dropped me off. Well, tell me about that. Tell me about the night before going in. Yeah, it was, nerve-wracking. Yeah. You know what I mean? And as time was progressing to get up there, I had kind of started taking like volumes and stuff like that. Yeah. And I was drinking a lot and whatever, even though I was on the pre-trial. You got to take the. Yeah. I was taking drug tests, but I started like, I was just stressed out and whatever. Sure. So I still was doing stuff, but I I was calculating the amount of time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I would know, like, okay, I could do this after this, and I would still use drugs here and there and whatever, but I knew, like, the half-life of how long it would take to get out of your system and stuff.
A lot of reading.
Yeah. So anyway, so
the night before you go, you feel nervous. You feel like did not probably sleep very well.
No.
Your girlfriend's with you.
Yeah.
She's probably freaked out because she doesn't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. So when she drove me there, I was feeling.
And that's a bad drive to Marion because
Yeah.
you get off on that highway and that you go down Prison Road.
Yeah.
And you don't, and I'm talking about this because this is where my dad was when I was 15 years old. And that was like, felt like we just drove into the field side. And then all of a sudden there's this monstrosity of a prison out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So I'm driving down the road and I see the prison and I'm like, my heart kind of sank because I knew it was a prison camp because I had low level, you know what I mean? Like it was the only other thing I had ever been in trouble for. I'd never been in trouble for drugs before, just the DWIs.
Right.
So, and I didn't have any violence in my background, whatever. So they allowed me to have camp. My experience with the federal government was actually, it was decent because I feel like I got a lot less than what I deserved. You know what I mean? Even though I made these mistakes, but
5 years to 10 to 15 was a lot different.
Yeah. The judge was merciful, and she looked at my thing, saw that I had my own business. It wasn't like I was doing this full time. It wasn't like my, it wasn't
you were
like
a drug king.
Yeah, it wasn't like I was this guy. I was just like surplusing my income, trying to take shortcuts. You know what I mean? So I'm driving we're driving down the road, and I see the prison. My heart kind of drops when I see that fence. I'm like, oh crap. You know what I mean? Like. So, and then we keep driving. I guess the GPS was taking us to the other place. Yeah. And I'm seeing all these guys like driving around in golf carts and driving around and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, these guys must work for the prison or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I guess then I realized like, wait, these are the prisoners? And I was like, oh man. So then so then I'm like, I started out good in there, and I was doing the right thing, and I was like, reading my Bible and studying. And then as time progressed, I'm like looking around. I'm like, wow, I kind of started realizing like I could get away with stuff in here. I don't have to like do this. So then I started like drinking in prison and I was like even selling K2 in there. So
was Marion an easier environment than Leavenworth as far as being able to do things like that?
Oh man. Yeah. Marion was way easier to get away with stuff. Yeah. 'Cause Leavenworth was like people who were like,
well, and you had a fence around it too.
Yeah, fence around it, but it was more the COs. Yeah. You know what I mean? The COs at Marion could have cared less.
Right.
The COs at Leavenworth were like Army people or you know what I mean? They were like, they had some background in where they actually cared about like more of a police mindset.
Yeah.
So it was more, difficult to, but even though I did do stuff at Leavenworth too, so because I got in prison and I just got so depressed, I didn't care. You know what I mean? I'm like,
you want to do something. Well, I mean, I guess maybe that was one of your strategies when being in prison is that you were going to do something to get your mind focused on. It might not have been a good thing if you were selling or drinking or whatever. You were focused on trying to get that stuff.
Yeah. I remember like I started saying at Marion, I'm like, I started coining the phrase. I'm like, I'm doing this time. I'm not letting this time do me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's what I started saying. And so
you're gonna own it.
Yeah, I was just like,
you're in control.
Yeah, I was in control. So and I was carrying bags of alcohol in on New Year's Eve, dude. I drank a 24-pack of Budweiser.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was stupid. Like that place was out of control. Like thank God I left Marion. I probably never would have changed. Because my bunkie, I'd learned how to make meth and stuff. And I'm like, why would I ever get cocaine again? I could just make meth anywhere.
You were learning how to be a better criminal.
Yeah. I figured out, I could take $20,000 and make $1.2 million worth of meth. You know what I mean? So anyway, so it was crazy. But God, had mercy on me, and eventually in that program RDAP and stuff.
Well, tell me about that because you get transferred from Marion to Leavenworth. That's how we meet.
Yeah. So I get transferred from Marion to Leavenworth, and
because of the RDAP program, which I always am confused about what the RDAP is. It residential drug
abuse program.
Yeah.
Which is
I always try to put alcohol in there.
It's
but it's
odd
abuse.
that you were in there. You know what I mean?
Well, I was in there. For those who don't know, this is one of the programs that you can get a year off and not just one, it is the program you can get a year off in the federal prison. And how I got in was in my pre-sentence report, the guy, I actually liked the guy that did the pre-sentence report, but he said, Brent, do you drink? And I said, yes, I do. He said, are you under a lot of stress? And I said, I am. He said, do you believe that you're drinking more because you're under stress? I said, yes.
Yeah.
He said, well, I'm going to put it in your pre-sentence report that you have a drinking problem. And he said, I'm going to recommend you for the RDEP program. And he said, it's your job to go and try to get into it when you get there. So I looked at it as the best thing that had happened to me through the whole program was this guy was trying to help me out. Yeah. Crazy.
No, it was a blessing. I almost didn't make it through the program. I don't know if you remember that part of me, but it was.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got transferred there, and I was like, all right, I have to do the right thing. But then while I was there, you know, the house I had in St. Peter's, the girl, you know, whatever, everything ended up, I lost it all.
Yeah.
Realizing it while I'm there, you know, she's dating one of my friends, you know, and I had.
It's all bad news.
Yeah. So, and I had been through that before. That's the first girl that I lost. Ended up dating. She's married, my best friend. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm just like pity party. You know what I mean? So.
Well, that is a bad story.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. You go to prison, it's going to happen.
Right.
Period. If it doesn't happen to you while you're in prison, like your story's one of the few.
It's unusual.
So, but it was because you were actually a good guy before you went to prison, and I wasn't. You know what I mean?
I had a good wife that you know from the beginning of this really just decided that she was going to walk through this with me, and Julie was really the glue that held. I think the girls looked at her when I was in prison and thought, you know, if mom can be this strong, then we can be this strong, and so I think that allowed the kids to strengthen up too. So I was very lucky on that.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
Yeah. So at Leavenworth though, I started more just doing like the K2 stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like you said, I just wanted to escape. And
I mean, for the people that don't know K2, that's like a synthetic marijuana. That's dangerous as hell.
It's not synthetic. See, that's what got me was they were like, oh, it's like synthetic marijuana. It is not like marijuana at all. It's like
put people in a zombie state.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you don't even realize you're in that state because now when people tell me stories about like, dude, you were like.
But let me ask you this though, because it's interesting that you would be willing to step into that in prison, knowing that it could get you more time. Did those thoughts come into your head that I'm in prison doing something on federal grounds here that I could get in trouble?
Yeah, there was a point. Well,
or did it just not even enter the equation?
Yeah, there was a point where, at some point I remember having the thought like I'm in prison for selling drugs. Yeah, and I'm selling drugs in prison.
Right.
Like, what's wrong with me? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? The change?
Yeah.
Like, but then I found like that battle where like. I didn't care. Mm-hmm. I stopped caring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't want to live. You know what I mean? Like I was struggling with like suicidal thoughts.
Sure.
So, you know what I mean? Like, so I remember I was smoking that K2 and I was in the RDAP program. Yeah. I'm in the residential.
No, you're living in the dorm.
Yeah.
The dorm.
And I was like,
the D block.
There was I think it was like 2 months where I just went on like a K2 binge. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, screw it.
You're a mess.
I didn't care about nothing. I was like, dude. Whatever, and I remember I was on at the softball field, in the dugout, and I had smoked some K2 or whatever, and I was sitting there, and I like all of a sudden like I felt my intestines like shaking on the inside of my stomach, and I saw like a great white light behind me. Now whether this great white light was a hallucination or it was real. I don't know, you know, but at that time, I believed.
All felt real.
It felt real. At that time, I believed God had sent an angel to be like, you know what, dude? I've given you so many opportunities. You're even in prison and you're doing this. Like, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
And then, like, I went from, like, thinking that I wanted to die to thinking that I was about to die at that time. And I realized, like, I don't want to die.
I don't want to die.
You know what I mean? Like, so then that's where things really started turning. I'm like, all right, Lord, I'm done.
That was the conversion.
Yeah, that was, like, the conversion. I'm like, all right, I'm done.
Dugout angel.
Yeah. That experience was like
because you did make a huge turn.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know just because you know you were only just a few bunks away from me, and it was pretty dramatic how you just turned the switch.
Yeah. I would say God turned the switch.
Well, I mean, in the dugout.
Yeah. Well, and it was funny because I didn't even realize I was addicted to that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I didn't realize it, but like I was like a crackhead for a second there. Like, and I had never been like that on the street.
But I guess going back to, because I asked that question, I really didn't think about why I asked that question that way. But I think maybe the reason why you were doing this stuff with K2 was that actually it turned out to be your strategy of how to handle hard days, unfair things that were going on the outside. You were slipping down into, I don't care. How can I relieve myself? How can I set myself free? And that's what the K2 did for you.
It was escape.
Yeah, escape.
You know what I mean? I don't, like, when I'm sober, I'm thinking about things.
Especially you might not want to think about.
The thing that I was thinking about the most was like failure.
Yeah.
Past mistakes. Things that you can't change. Right. I was thinking about things that I couldn't change over and over and over again to the point where I wanted to
when
die.
you think about those things that are on the outside that are not what you want to have happen, you feel further and further away from that. And that feels deeper and deeper part of the depression part of it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I get it, because that was, because, you know, people have all kinds of different strategies. You know, some people, like I was talking to Murph the other day, Murph, when he had hard days in prison, he'd cook because he was a good cook, and he'd fry those honey buns or he'd do whatever. But for you, you went to something that you knew you could escape with. Yeah. Even in prison, you could do it.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you get a bolt of lightning hit you in the dugout, and you say, "No, actually, I don't want to die today. I don't want to die tomorrow. I'm gonna shake myself out of this." Yeah.
And I had hope. Yeah. You know, that I could. And then there was just like God was just drawing me, saying, look, you got to forget about this. I forgive you of those things, and there's hope. And like, the one thing you need to do is stop remembering that stuff that I've forgiven you for. And it was like, you're suffering the consequences for what you've done. And that's, you know, like part of like being in the consequences is like, you have to get over that hopelessness.
Well, you got to give yourself a break.
I got to finish this out. Like, it is what it is. Like, there's, you know what I'm saying?
Well, you got to give yourself a break. I mean, you have to finally say, whatever it is, I'm stepping forward.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to step into whatever it is, even if it scares me what I'm stepping into. I'm stepping forward, and hope. Yeah. You know, is such a huge word. Yeah. For an inmate. Yeah. Because I think that's the thing, that one single thing that can get somebody through their time and they step into wherever they're going to. If they don't have that, then they go down the slippery slope of wherever that abyss is.
Yeah, because that's what depression is, hopelessness. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, but hope, man, it was, I remember I started running. You know, I got in really good shape after that, and I was, you know, but anyway, so I started, but I remember like I started running on the you know, the sidewalk. Yeah. And I remember like this is right after
I remember because I was walking.
I started turning, right. So, and I remember like, I started to mention, like, I had gotten addicted to that stuff. When I stopped doing that stuff, I didn't sleep for 2 weeks almost. Wow. I was having diarrhea. I didn't sleep or eat for like almost 2 weeks. Wow. Because I didn't realize the reverse effect happened. Yeah. I didn't realize that. So that stuff must slow your metabolism and everything down so much that when you stop, everything goes the hyper opposite direction. Like, so I was sleepless. I'm not able to eat. I'm having diarrhea and stuff. So, and I had never like experienced, like, I don't know if it was withdrawals or what, but I'd never experienced that type of thing before. So I experienced that. So then I start working out. I'm going to read my Bible. You know, I was doing the word of the day every day. I'm like reading scripture, doing quote, just participating in the program. I'm like, all right, I'm actually going to apply this stuff to my life. Even though I don't agree with the government and whatever. This stuff I can apply to my life and actually use it to benefit my life. But I started running on the track. And I remember like when I first started running, I would look at the end, like we're at the half mile point. Yeah. And I'd be like, like, dude, I'm not going to make it there. You know what I mean? And God really just showed me, like, look, just put your head down. Don't look at where you're going. You just run. You know what I mean? You just keep running. You just take one step at a time. Don't think about where you're going. Don't look at how far you've come, but just keep going. You know what I mean? So I really learned to, like, all right, put my head down and just get to work. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's a real strategy in prison, too. I think anytime you try to look too far ahead, it's way overwhelming. You know, getting through prison, and I think just getting through really life, you probably shouldn't look too far ahead. You know, deal with the day, try to win the day, try to take the next step forward. and then, you know, before you know it, you've taken a lot of steps. I think people get overwhelmed easily if they look way too far ahead and think, oh my God, that's too much. I can't do it. I can't. I can't. And then that's you got to back it up.
Well, especially when you're in prison.
Yeah.
Like, who could imagine? Like, I would have never imagined in prison that if you would have told me, you know, a year after you get out of prison, you'll be married and have a baby on the way.
Yeah.
I would have been like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't see it.
Or if you would have said, I don't know, I got out in 2017, January.
Yeah.
So it's been
Yeah.
almost 5 years
Yeah.
now. If you'd have told me in 5 years, you will actually have enough working capital to be flipping houses.
Yeah.
And you'll have freedom. Your wife won't have to work. You'll actually have 2 babies.
And you've been incredibly successful with this. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you got out and we're kind of jumping ahead here, but you got out but you had skills.
Yeah.
You just applied all that into a business that you were going to say, hey, I'm all in this time. And it started happening. And now, I mean, yeah, it has been 5 years, really.
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
Or December.
Well, but prison was really a blessing for me because I don't know if I would have ever got out of that cycle of chasing my tail, where robbing Peter to pay Paul, if I hadn't had that interruption. You know what I mean? So, and it also interrupted me because I was about to start getting more involved with drugs, to where if I hadn't gotten caught when I did, I probably would have had a 10 to 20 year prison sentence.
Right, because you would have gotten a lot deeper.
Yeah. So it was about to get deeper, and I remember but anyway, so that doesn't matter.
Well, because you and I were lucky enough to get the jobs to work on, because working at the golf course, it's kind of a funny thing to say that we worked on a golf course while we were in prison. But I thought it was to me, that was like it couldn't have been any better. You know, I learned how to do all this stuff that I would have never learned how to do, you know, drive all this equipment and, you know, do all the stuff that we got to do.
Yeah.
And you and I were doing that. But I was thinking, do you ever have anything from prison that you've kept that reminds you of prison?
Not really like an outward thing.
Yeah.
But inwardly, you know, now with the children and the wife and the craziness of life, like, I have this inward thing where I honestly sometimes feel like I miss prison, crazy enough, because of...
What do you miss?
I miss the solitude. You know what I mean?
That's deep.
Is that crazy?
Yeah, that's
not?
deep.
Like, don't tell my wife this. I'm not going to let her listen to this. But I do sometimes miss the solitude. I miss that time of being able to be alone and really focus.
The only reason I ask is I was thinking that the other day somebody asked me about these leather bands that I wear on my wrist. And if you remember, Magic made those.
Oh, yeah, Magic. Is he still alive?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But he worked with us on the golf course,
Yeah.
and we called him Magic because he did like landscaping with flowers and stuff, made everything look nice. So, but he also made these leather bands. But I didn't keep anything from the prison life, but I did keep these. But it was more of a connection that he did that, and I liked him, and it does remind me of the gratitude of getting out of there and making a life after the fact. But tell me about this. So we're working. We basically got out at the same time.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts going through your head when you were getting close to the door?
Well, I was thinking I got to find Cassidy and marry one of his daughters. No, I'm just joking. So, at least he'll let me marry one of his daughters. He understands, because I'm thinking I can't get married, you know. But no, I'm just kidding. But man, my thoughts going out the door were, I don't know. I have to, whatever I've gained, I can't lose again.
Right.
I remember because I got into working out, and the physical training aspect really got me through that studying God's word. But I spent a lot of time really focusing on.
Did you have the plan? I mean, I'm just curious. Because you jumped into getting into making basically a business for yourself again.
Yeah.
Was that your plan?
Well, I think that it was just what I knew. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think that I knew that I started working for a guy, and, you know, I'm making $25 an hour and whatever. And most people coming out of prison, you know, getting paid $25 an hour, you know, so.
Yeah, that was good.
I had a good skill set. You know what I mean? I was good at what I did.
Yeah.
You know, even though I did all these really crazy, foolish things, especially when I had that beard, And I was really
you painted a lot of prison.
Yeah, I
rooms
painted.
too.
I made money on that was my side hustle.
Playing stamps, yeah.
Painting people's prison cells. That was fun. But so I made.
You don't probably put that on your resume.
No. I don't even.
I'm really good at painting prison cells.
Yeah. I've never
sometimes with a couple of different colors.
Yeah. I've never even done a resume really. I've worked for myself since 2003. You know what I mean? So and even when I was working for that guy, you know, so I started working with him, and I was. He was like a millionaire that should have been a billionaire because he did everything himself. And I'm like, man, if you had a team, you could do so much more. And I was like, I offered him like, hey, I'll come, you know, offer me a salary and a partnership here, and I'll partner with you because he had the money. I'll partner with you, and we'll do whatever. And he was like, he offered me $52,000 a year, and that paid vacations, whatever.
Yeah,
that was it. No percentages, anything, and anything. And he was like, and I was like, really, man? Like, he's like, I just don't think that you're gonna be, you know, successful, basically.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Like, you can't do it. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? So then when I stopped work, as soon as they let me off of paper, I quit working for him and I started my own business. But in the back of my mind, like, I still had all my tools. You know, when I'm coming home, well, some of them got stolen, whatever, taken, whatever. I collected what I had. I still had stuff. I was, you know, just focused. I was saving money. I was just reinvesting all the money I was making with that guy. I was buying tools, whatever, just reinvesting into construction. Got another work van.
How long were you at the Dismas house, the halfway house?
I mean, I had 6 months there, but I was only there probably a couple months before I leveled up.
What I was,
you know what I mean? And I took bed bugs back to my mom's house. That was a nightmare.
Terrible.
That was terrible.
They finally closed the place down. I saw that.
Thank you, Jesus.
That was in the news the other day.
Really?
Yeah. They lost their $45 million contract and went to someone else.
Really?
After all that time. Yeah.
Wow.
Terrible place.
I don't know.
Terrible people running the place.
Yeah. I was like, man, what is this? I'm like, did I just get this many mosquito bites or what?
Yeah, it's infested.
No, it was bed bugs. It cost my parents like $3,500 to get their house right.
Crazy.
So, but anyways.
Well, tell me this, because you talk about, you know, that you got married, you had a couple of kids, and you've got this is prison, you know, out of prison.
Yeah.
How did all that happen?
So.
I mean, you know, we're talking about 5 years.
Yeah, I
got a business, got a wife, got 2 kids. Yeah. Bring me in. What's going on?
So I think I probably did exactly the same amount of time as you did, because you had a 5-year sentence.
Yeah.
So we did the same sentence. You know,
pretty much.
Mine was deserved, yours was undeserved. You know what I mean? But that was, you know, the flip side of things. But so I get home, I'm working out in the gym, I'm in great shape. You know, like 6-8 pack. You know what I mean? Like so. And I'm in really good shape, and I'm realizing, like, whenever I had my time, I think it was like I was working in St. Charles, so I was focusing my time on working for that guy, and then I would make it to the gym and work out. And as I was there, I was like, these girls and stuff, I'm like, oh man, and I'm praying, I'm like, Lord, like, I can't. If I end up with one of these girls at this gym, I'm going to end up in the same place. I knew that I had to find.
Well, I mean, Eric, if you can't see him, he is a good-looking guy, so he could probably get into a big mess with girls at the gym.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, like, I knew that this was just another path of destruction for me. You know, like the ungodly woman, or just me womanizing or doing this thing. And it's funny because I was in a position where, even though I had been able to do that in my past just with my looks, and I had worked out a little bit in my life, but now I'm like...
Yeah, you're prison ripped.
I'm prison ripped and a good-looking dude. Like, I could have slaughtered
How do you go back to your high school weight? Go to prison.
Yeah. Right. I'd have been like Will Chamberlain or something, you know? But so it was a battle, and I'm praying. I'm like, Lord, like, you know, take this burn away, you know, like this burn for... this lustful burn, you know, so like I'm in trouble because I'm gonna end up with
2 or 3,
a few of these girls. Yeah. So and I'm praying, and I'm like, you know, Lord, take this away. And I was going to my friend's house. He was a lawyer. He was one of my friends that I, you know, had stayed in contact with, and he was a good guy. I had met him like when I was 22 and I first turned to God. I was on house arrest. I met him at a Bible study. You know what I mean? So and he kind of discipled me, and he stayed a good friend. And so I was going to his house. He was living at his mother-in-law's because something had happened with his law job where he was going through a bad season. And so I was going to their house for dinner on Thursday nights, and he would drop me back off at Dismas' house. And his wife, they had 3 kids, and his wife was like, I'm going there. And this is around March. And his wife, so I'd only been out 2.5 months. And his wife was like, hey, I met this girl at the winery, and I told her about you, and she really wants to meet you. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, I told her everything about you. I'm like, wait a minute, so you met this girl, you told her everything about me, and she still wants to meet me? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, I don't want to meet her. You know what I mean? Like, why would I want to meet this psycho? You know what I mean? Like, so she was, she's my age and no kids or anything. And she's a beautiful woman. And I'm like, and then I'm praying about it, and I told her, like, I don't want to meet her, and then I was praying about it, and I felt like the Lord was just like, look, no, this is.
You thought you didn't want to meet her because she knew your whole story and still wanted to meet you?
Yeah, I was like, she's either fat or crazy, you know what I mean? So that was my mentality, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, no, and so I was praying about it. I'm like, and then I felt like the Lord was like, no, you've been asking about this burn, you know what I mean, and you need a godly woman in your life, and. So I fasted, and I called her, and when I called her, we talked on the phone for an hour and a half, and I knew after I got off the phone there that I was going to marry her.
You're going to marry her.
Yeah, wow. Crazy. So then I even wrote in this journal, I met her on April Fool's Day, so April 1st, and on March 31st, I had written in a journal like, thank you, God, for my wife. I just knew, you know what I mean? And then we went on a date, and
was it a fast romance to marriage?
Yeah, well, because I was like at that point where I was determined. I'm like, I need to get going. We're not having sex before marriage. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm getting all my ducks in a row. So the only way to do that is to get married fast. You know what I'm saying? So we got married 5 months later. You know what I mean? So, and it was difficult because we're still getting to know each other. You know what I mean? So, but so there's, the pros and cons of long-term engagements, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to work it out with somebody no matter what. You know what I mean? I don't care if you're with them 5 years. You know what I mean? You're going to have to work it out. So we got married, and, we weren't perfect, but we didn't have sex. You know what I'm saying? So, but, and that was just a cool thing, like, to be able to say that, just from a different aspect.
And what was her take on your background history? Obviously, she was very accepting.
Yeah, well, her dad was in ministry. Yeah. I never got to meet him. Well, I met him, but he was not mentally. He was incapacitated. So, so he was in ministry. So he had done like a homeless ministry and stuff. So she was, and they were like not the richest
somewhat
people.
Connected.
So she was raised in ministry. So she was just more open to. This what Jesus is capable of doing with an idiot. You know what I mean? Like she had faith in Jesus, and she saw that I had faith in Jesus, and she knew what Jesus could do. You know what I'm saying? So so she, like, and it's funny because she even now she's like, man, you've changed a lot. Just even because you know how it is when you come home from prison, you're all about like respecting my stuff and whatever. Like, hey, don't touch my stuff. And
don't you think it takes a little while just to get back to adjusted that you are who you want to be when you get out? Because you have to get your mind unscrambled.
Well, and you have to realize that like what you can apply in there and your expectation of others in there, you can't have the same expectations of people in real life, because real people in real life don't have the time or the means to be able to live the proper etiquettes. You know what I'm saying? Or they don't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
They don't one of the best things I gained from prison was I learned how to respect people. Yeah,
respect is a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, respect is one of the only things that you have that keeps the place sane.
Yeah.
Otherwise it could be totally out of control.
Yeah. Respect is a good thing to learn, and if only we could learn that more.
So Eric, you ended up, you got married, you got your business going, and I know just because you and I stayed in touch, you got a house and you got it renovated, you did good on it, you got another house, and you've just been doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even get you to do anything else. I mean, I had a job for you. Would have been hell. No, I can't do that. I only do my own stuff now. But that's great. I love it. And I'm proud of. I'm so proud of that. When you thinking about having kids, now you have 2.
Well, honestly, I wasn't thinking about it.
It just happened.
Well, to be honest, I was really selfish.
There's a whole book on that.
Like my wife, when I got married to her, like I secretly kind of hoped that she wasn't able to get pregnant, because all of her sisters were not able to get pregnant naturally. and they had to do in vitro. And one of the things that I made her agree to before we got married was, hey, I do not feel comfortable doing in vitro or whatever. Like, look, I don't want to force it. You know, let's do it naturally. Like, if we force the pregnancy and the kid ends up being the Antichrist or some killer, maybe there's a reason why we're not supposed to have kids. Like, I don't want to force it. So she agreed to that. So in my mind, I'm thinking, according to what her sister's experienced, she wouldn't be able to get pregnant, but she got pregnant.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And again.
Yeah, twice. And actually, she got pregnant again, but she did have a miscarriage.
Okay.
And that was just within the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
But you know, hey, that's life.
No,
you know?
it's part of the whole thing, and but kids are great.
Oh man, they're so awesome.
Let me ask you this: being out, I mean, you and I have been out about the same time. What do you think you appreciate the most about being out of prison now?
Man, I think I appreciate the most being out of prison is being able to have gained so much from that prison experience, but to be able to put it behind me and forget about it. You know what I mean? Like
almost like you accomplished it, conquered it,
and
have been able to use that confidence that you can do that, and conquer that, so that everything that you go now, it can never be as bad as that.
Yeah. Like now it's like my wife had a miscarriage. Like, oh well, you know what I mean? Like to be able to say it is what it is. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that is what.
You remember Rauschenbach said that as word of the day or phrase of the day, and we had to write forever because they didn't like that phrase.
But it is what it is.
Like, it is what it is.
You know, so I love that. That's what I've gained from it. But coming back, I think that it's just the experience, man, and to be able to be humble and to be able to see people and be real with people and not judge anybody ever again, not ever think that I could understand how someone could end up in the circumstances they're in, no matter what the case. We don't really ever really know the backstory.
And I so agree with you that the humble part of going into prison or being in prison and having that experience of being an inmate does humble you in a way that you've never really been humbled. And I think that also stays with you too, because you have gratitude now that you're not in that situation. So it's a strange dynamic that I think only, you know, as you experience that, you feel it. But I to wrap things up, if I haven't asked you, but what would you want to say to the people listening that maybe I haven't asked you?
Man, what would I want to say? The thing that people need to understand the most is that, you know, we're human and we make mistakes. And if you're gonna succeed, you're gonna fail. Yeah. And failure is part of the path to success. And it's not even about you can't let that affect you. Yeah. You know, you have to take failure and roll with it and just keep pursuing your dreams and what it is that whatever is in your heart to accomplish. You know what I mean? And really figure out, like, really what's your purpose in life. Like for me, this physical thing is so short. It's like, to me, you have to have an eternal mindset, you know, for me, because for me, a guy like me, it's like I can see no matter what I accomplish on this earth, it's still temporary. You know what I mean? And like I could do all these great things and then die. And then, like, what's the point? You know what I mean? So for me personally, it's like, you got to have an eternal mindset, like, and the hope that God gives us through Jesus is in the resurrection from the dead. Like, to me, that's like, if I didn't have that, I don't think I would be a good person. You know what I'm saying?
And I think what you said too is so important to always think, you know, that first of all, good people can make mistakes, and that failures happen when you're trying to succeed. Yeah. And, you know, you can't be afraid, or let me say this, you can be afraid of it, you still have to step into it.
Yeah, the fear.
There is fear. Yeah. There's always going to be fear, and that's part of the whole nightmare success thing. You know, you step through your nightmares and your fears to get where you want to be. Yeah. And I think that is whatever motivates you, whatever gets your fuel in your tank is whatever you've got to use to step into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The fear. Well, and for a guy like me, fear was never really a problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? I had a lack of fear. You know what I mean? So, but for a guy like you to be in the position you were in and to actually have created a successful system So fear for me and you is like a little bit different. Fear for me now is like fear of letting things fall away again. You know what I mean? Fear of not being a good father or a husband or whatever. Like all the things
everyday
that
fears.
Yeah, everyday fears. Like I gotta hold on to this stuff and not make the fear of not making the same mistakes. You know, so. And whereas for you, it's like you didn't really. What did you do wrong? You know what I mean?
Well, no, I mean I've done things wrong. So I mean, and I think everybody has their own fears. It's just how do you handle those fears, and that's what makes the difference.
Amen.
All right, folks. Eric, Russ, thank you so much for being here today. This is fun. And everybody, I really appreciate the listens and the likes. And if you got something you want to buy for Christmas, hey, Nightmare Success book is out. It's easy. Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Go out and get yourself a copy. Everybody, Nightmare Success in and out. Thanks for being here today.